on the idea that the Aron disappeared, swallowed up somewhere. So the entire Mishkan, he wanted to see the curtains of the Mishkan, the hooks, everything of the Mishkan, all of that was brought to the Beis HaMikdash, but then we don't know what happened to it. King Solomon and all of those that were gathered with him stood in front of the Aron. They sacrificed sheep and cattle of such numbers that there was no count kept. There was no number kept, because that was the form of service. The form of service in the dedication of the Mishkan, and later in the dedication of the Beis HaMikdash, was through animal sacrifices. So these sacrifices were brought as the Aron was brought up. Later we will see that all the meat and everything was distributed among the populace for their consumption. The Kohanim were able to bring the Aron into its proper place. We'll discuss in a moment what the proper place was. Now here you have the, as you know, the Aron Kodesh was in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, in the Holy of Holies. And no one was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies except the high priest, the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim. And the penalty for trespass, let us say, was death. Whether instant death from heaven, as the Talmud records for us many times, or for breach of the rules. But the penalty was a capital punishment. And it was a severe thing, because people who were unworthy were not allowed to enter. And if they did enter, it's like, the best example that I can think of is like someone entering a radioactive area without proper insulating protection on his body. So the person is destroyed. Not because there's anything malicious in the radioactivity. I mean, isn't that they were out to zap it? Nobody shot a radar gun at him. But what happened was that he walked into a contaminated area and he was unprotected. So the Beis HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, had a spiritual radioactivity to it. It had that quality to it. And if one was not worthy, then it was dangerous. It was just simply dangerous to be there. The Talmud tells us that in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, when the office of the Kohen Gadol became a position that was bought and sold, became a political situation subject to graft. So for a long period of time, for decades on end, no Kohen Gadol survived Yom Kippur. So the Kohen Gadol used to go in with a hook on his belt so that they could pull him out. So you'll say, well, how could they get candidates for the job? Well, if you'll think about the presidency of the United States or other such, there always are people who are willing, always people who think they're the exception, or even if they know they're not the exception, but the honor alone is sufficient to entice people. And that's what happened with the Kehuna Gedola, with the high priesthood of the second Beis HaMikdash. So here, the problem is, how did the Kohanim carry the ark into the Kodesh HaKodeshim? And the answer was that the danger did not arise until after the Kodesh HaKodeshim was established, naturally. But while this was still part of the process of the dedication, of the construction, so to speak, then it was allowed. That was a famous idea of Kook formulated in his philosophy, which may or may not be correct, but he said that in the building of the Jewish homeland, in the building of the Jewish state, he said when the Holy of Holies was being built, he said any carpenter could walk in, any artisan, the bricklayers, not everybody. The guys that were building it weren't, but when it was being built, so then anybody could build it. Once it was built, Then it had the chidush, it had the holiness that settled therein, and then it responded to different rules. It was the Spirit of God, so to speak, came upon the building, and it was different. So he said that was the example about building Eretz Yisrael in our time. He said, Eretz Yisrael is holy. But while it's being built, anybody, that's the great advantage of while it's being built, anybody can build. Even those who are not holy, particularly. Once it's built, he says, then it develops again a very delicate stomach. Doesn't suffer people easily anymore.